welcome to a safety step change session provided by Predictive Solutions. My name is Chuck Pettinger and I'll be presenting concepts, philosophies, and tools to help you create and sustain a step change in your safety culture. Step change process, a call for change management. So, I work with many companies that try to elicit change in the organization, and what's interesting is that many of them don't realize that there's actually a process to take organizations through to make sure that your change is sustainable. And really, when you think about how safety has been managed over the past 25 years, at least in my experience, a lot of the employees look at safety initiatives as flavor of the week. I mean, there's so many different things that get rolled out. There's rules and regulations, policy procedures, guards and sensors, incentive programs, near-miss processes, inspections, observations, pre-job briefs, and then mostly education and training. So how it typically works is somebody gets hurt and we train them on ladder safety, right? So it's really seen as a one-off initiative. So the way that typically change process is done, and they're not just in safety, but it's train and hope. I provide them training and I hope it works. And as they say, hope is not a strategy. So what I'd like to talk about in these next sessions is the new way of thinking about it. How do we elicit change in an organization, and not only that, but make sure that it's sustainable? That's the key to making a difference in people's lives. So, if you think about many organizations, they do pretty good in safety. A lot of the companies we work with are at a really low recordable rate. But the problem is that what got you to where you are today actually may be holding you back from where you need to go tomorrow. So what we have to do is understand that to be successful and have a process that's sustainable, we have to look at how to do change. So, how do we do that? Well, we have to plan for change. Now, I read many books and I read all the different change gurus out there. One of my favorite authors is John P. Cotter. He's a Harvard business professor, and he's written many books on the topics of culture change, leadership, and then leading change. How do you take organizations through change? And I think his is one of the more succinct models. His book, Leading Change, is quoted in many of the other journal articles out there as a really robust way of doing that. I tend to like The Heart of Change, which followed Leading Change, and it was the more tactical. How do you take Cotter's 8 stages, and how have organizations used that to make a difference? And then the other book that I really enjoy, which is part of the change process, is really Leading Change. So he makes a big distinction between leadership and management. So let's talk about those 8 stages of change. So the first one is increasing a sense of urgency. Now, don't worry about the detail on these. Each of my sessions is going to cover one of these stages. So let me just briefly go over them, and then in the sessions following we'll chat more about that. So the first one, increasing that sense of urgency. Unfortunately, in safety, this is done almost by default. If somebody has a serious incident or a death, there's this burning platform. We got to do something. Heads will roll. We'll elicit change across the board. And unfortunately, when you're in that position, a lot of companies are doing change just to do change. I like to look at it more as proactively eliciting change. So one thing that you want to focus on when trying to start a change in your organization is what can we do to get people to feel a sense of urgency, like we need to change, without having it based on an injury. Second step is to build the guiding team. Now, one thing you don't want to just default to is using pre-existing teams. Right? You don't want to use the pre-existing safety committee, executive safety committee. You want to get people on this team, this guiding coalition, that will have some ownership of it, that will build it. And it should be a cross-organizational team as well. So get the guiding team right, and then you focus on the vision. Now, many companies have visions. Not saying that you ditch your company vision, but you should have a vision for what this new change is going to do in your organization. And if the vision is right, it should fall within your overall corporate vision. Now, these first 3 steps is really creating the climate for change. So once you get these first 3 things done, then you roll out the change. So we have to really understand how we're going to do that. How we're going to communicate the change that's going to be best for getting everyone to buy in, to own that sense of urgency, to see the vision, right? And then part of the coalition or guiding team's function is try to empower that action. In other words, identify the barriers that may get in the way of making the change stick and removing them, knocking those barriers down. And then the 6th step is to create these short-term wins. Many people just look at, well, I've rolled out the training, and we'll wait for the injury rate to fall to 0. Well, that's not good enough. If you're going to get a process that's going to change and sustain, you have to identify short-term wins along the way that we can point to and say, see, this process that we just did, it's working. You can't wait for the big ending. So, create short-term wins. And really, the second phase is engaging and enabling the organization to be empowered to change. Unfortunately, this is where many companies fall off the wagon. They may be good at communicating what they want people to do and even knocking down some of the barriers by providing resources or time to do the new initiative. Not a lot of people focus on short-term wins, right? But one thing we want to do is don't let up. The danger period is 12 to 18 months down the road. All right, we've done that. That's old news. What's next? What's the next flavor of the week? So you can't let up, right? That's why you want short-term wins, and then you add more and more detail until the process is just the way we do things. And that's the last stage that many people fall down on, the sustainability. How do we sustain the change? And that's kind of what we do at Predictive Solutions. Really, I think we're a sustainability company. We get people a process that can sustain the initiatives that they have. And we have tools to do that. And really, that's anchoring the change within the culture. So, within those 8 stages of change, I see many companies go through these phases. And by using those 8 stages of change, you can move from being leading to world class. So really, this philosophy, by following these 8 stages of change, right, you can create a culture that can embrace what you're trying to do by using these change management philosophies and making sure that you sustain that change. Really, what we're all adding up to is trying to eliminate death in the workplace. So, in the next few sessions, I'm going to talk about each one of these phases, along with the steps, and by doing that, we can create that long-term sustainable change that, in the end, will help eliminate death in our workplace this century.